So we're D2 2016 differentiate question 5. The network below represents a project using activity on arc. The durations of the activities are not yet shown. I don't know. If C were to turn out to be a critical activity, which two other activities would be forced to be critical? Right. Remember what it means. It means if C is going to be critical, that means any delay to C delays the whole project. Okay? If C isn't critical, then we could delay C and it wouldn't affect the whole project. That's what being critical means. So when it's saying that, we really mean if any delay to C affects the whole thing, then F must also be critical, mustn't it? Because F depends upon C. So F is one of them. And if F is also critical, then H depends upon F happening. We can't afford any delay in F. H would have to be critical as well. So I read that and I thought, oh, is that a trick question? Is it kind of suggesting that it would force some of A or B or D or any of these to be critical? But it's not, it's kind of just taking it at face value. If C was critical, then the two ones that depend upon C would also have to be critical. So that's it, simple as that. Then it says, complete the table in the answer book to show the immediate predecessors for each activity. Now this is a little bit hard, isn't it? And this is where there were 2 marks for this. 1 mark was for the first half of the table, the second mark for the second half, and quite a few people lost a mark on the first half. A, B and C don't depend on anything, do they? So we're going to start by marking A, B and C as not being dependent upon anything. Then we're going to look at D. Well, clearly D depends upon activity A. That's fair enough, isn't it? So D depends upon A. Activity E. Activity E is there. Look at the arrows that lead into that vertex before it. E depends upon B, and also because of that dummy there, it depends upon D. Now I think there's a slightly odd thing going on here, because am I right in thinking this, that dummy is entirely unnecessary, isn't it? If we were drawing this network ourselves based on the precedence table, we would actually lose a mark for putting that dummy in there, because you lose marks for putting in unnecessary dummies. So it's a kind of interesting quirk here, that I don't think there's any reason for that dummy. There's no reason why that activity couldn't come straight down there and join that node. But anyway, it tells us that E depends on B and D. And now F. This is the bit where I think some of us lost some marks. What does F depend upon? Well, it certainly depends upon C, because it follows that. That dummy arc there indicates that it depends upon B, but also depends upon D, because D comes into that vertex. So activity F depends upon B, C and D. Do we see that? That's where most of us lost a mark, because we didn't put D in that one. That should be B, C and D. Right. That leads us on to the second half, which is again a bit more straightforward, I think. What about activity G? That depends upon E. That's straightforward enough. H is F and E. So that was E, and then E and F. I depends upon G and H, because the dummy's going the other direction there, notice. So that's G and H. And J just depends upon H. What am I doing? Oh, I've gone the wrong way there, haven't I? There. So that was G and H, and that one was H. That's it. That's all we have for that table. Then the question said, in fact, C is not a critical activity. Table 1 lists the activities and their durations, but happily, they put all of those durations onto that table in your answer booklet, so you actually had the full network for you to work through. Carry out a forward and backward pass through the activity network, showing the early event time and late event time at each vertex, state the minimum project completion time as well. So, remember how we do this. We start with a 0 in that first box. Activity D only depends on that one, so that event there is after A is completed, after 10. That, well, this one I'm going to be a bit careful of, because that one depends upon D, so we'll do that in a minute. That one depends upon both of those. Well, actually, we need to go this way, don't we? That would need to be a 15, because it requires those two to have finished. So here, we've got either 15 or 15. So that's going to be 15 in that box. We can do this box now. That requires either 15 plus 0 or the 10 from there, so that needs to have a 15 in it. Which one could we do next? This one we'll have to do. That is 15, add the 15 of that activity takes us to 30. Down at this vertex here, we've got 30 plus 0 or 15 plus 5. We need both of those to have happened, so we need to take the bigger one, so it's the 30 plus 0. We can then look here at the end of H, that would be 30 plus another 15. This vertex here is either 30 plus 10, or it's 15 add 15. Sorry, I just said 30 plus 15 and wrote the wrong answer there, didn't I? So that was a 45. So this one here is either 30 add 10, or 45 add 0. So that 45 was actually crucial there, wasn't it? It was a 45 in that box. We're on to the last box, which is either 45 add 5 or 45 add 15. So that gives us 60 at the end of the forward pass. And that is our minimum event completion time. That's our final figure there. Now we're going to go backwards. We start with a 60 in that box there, and we're doing the subtracting now. So we are going to do, we need to look at that one first. 60 take away 5 is 55. So the latest time we can leave that node is 55. 55 take 0 or 60 take 15. We choose the smaller on the way back, don't we? So that's 45. We're looking at which one next? Must be that one. 45 take 15 is 30. And up here we're looking at 55 take 10 or 30 take 0. 30 take 0 would be the smaller. So here we're looking at 30 take away 5, which is 25. And here we're looking at 25 take 0 or 30 take 15, and that gives us 15. The top box here is 15 take away 0, 15 take away 5 is 10, and 10 take away 10 or 15 take away 15 or 25 take away 10, the smallest of those is 0, so that's our complete thing. There were 2 marks for the forward scan, there are 2 marks for the backward scan. You're allowed 1 independent error in your method mark, but the accuracy mark in each case had to be for it being entirely correct. So you could get the method mark even if you weren't quite there. And 1 independent error means that 1 error other than, like if you've done your forward scan, your backward scan will be wrong. But if you've done your forward scan and got a method mark for that, you could still get the method mark for the backward scan if you didn't make any further mistakes. Okay, but if you made another independent mistake, you didn't get that mark. Then remember, the question said, we made a big point of this, state the minimum project completion time. Which is 60, and state the critical activities. Now the critical activities are the ones, remember we've tended to highlight these in the past, where any delay to the activity would affect the overall time. So A is critical, and so is D, and so in fact is B, so both of those are critical, but then the critical path is this one, E, and then it jumps down to here, doesn't it? So H is critical and J is critical. And that's our critical path, which is A and B and D, E, H, J. They are the critical activities. Okay. Notice that slightly quirky thing where there's a kind of a double route to the critical path in the early stages. It kind of joins up again there. Right. Then you were supposed to schedule it, weren't you? Part 4, draw a schedule to show how 3 people can complete the project in the minimum time, with each event, each activity starting at its earliest possible time. Each box represents 5 minutes, that's kind of obvious. Now, again, read the question really carefully. I was lenient with somebody, and I can't remember who it was, but the question was quite clear here. For each person, write the letter of the activity they are doing in each box, or leave the box blank if the person is resting for those 5 minutes. So it's not okay to draw a little rectangle and put the letter in the middle of your rectangle. I know we've often done that, but it specifically told you not to do that. It said, put a letter in every single box. If a box is blank, it means that there's no activity going on in that space. So we have to be really careful here. I prefer to put the critical activities in first, and then fill the rest of it around it. So A and B, A, D, so A is 10, D is 5, and then it would be E, which is 15, H is 15, and J is 15 as well. So that's the first part, the critical path. We also recognise that B was critical, so let's have person 2 do activity B, and there we are. That's the critical path marked in. I did that first. Now I just need to put the other activities at their earliest possible times. So the other activities were C, which is earliest start time is 0. F, earliest start time is 15. We can put it there, can't we? Sorry, F is only 5. Put too many letters in there. G, earliest start time 30, and it lasts for 10. And I, earliest start time 45, and it lasts for 5. And so my diagram would look like that. There were variations on that. The one in the mark scheme was slightly different to that because it had, you can swap A and D and B around, and you can put them with different people. It doesn't matter which person is doing what, but the overall pattern looks like that. Everybody happy with that? You have to be really careful that you don't do what I did and got a bit carried away and put F in 2 boxes when it was only lasting for 5 minutes. It's really easy to make a mistake and find yourself out of sync with what you're doing. Now the next bit, it said, show how 2 people can complete the project in the minimum time. So we've now got to do this with 2 people. Remember the critical activities, if it's going to happen in the minimum time, then the critical activities have to be where they are. We don't have any choice about that. So I'm going to start by copying my critical activities in the same places because I've got no flexibility. That's the whole nature of them being critical, is that I can't move them around. I have to try and move other things around. Now activity C has to be finished by 25. So if I put C in there, it's finished by 25. F has to be finished by 30. So F can go in there. G has to be finished by 55, but it can start at 30, so I'm going to put G in there next. And I, well, I can put I in the same place I had it before, and it's fine, and that's got everything in there. So again, you had, I think, a very slight amount of variation. I could have gone in any of those 3 boxes. There could have been a G either there or there. That's the only variation that you can have in it. But that was it. And that was another 2 marks. And then, finally, this is quite a cheap 2 marks. I think they're a bit stingy here, because I think you could have turned this into a lot more work than just 2 marks. It said, explain why the cost of saving 5 minutes by reducing A is more than £200. You've got this table. Do we need to look at the table? That gives you the cost of reducing certain activities by certain amounts of times. By reducing them by 5 minutes to the new duration that's given there, there's a cost to doing that. And you're supposed to save 5 minutes by reducing activity A. Well, it costs 5 minutes to reduce activity A. But the whole point of this is that if we were to reduce activity A, then activity D still has to happen immediately after A. And this bit here, the next thing, can't happen until A and D and B have all finished. So the fact that A and D only last a total of 10 minutes doesn't make any difference. We still have to wait around for B to finish before we can carry on. So if actually it was going to reduce the project time, B would also have to be shortened by 5 minutes, and that would cost us £400 to do that. So that's the first thing to say. That was only one mark, because B would also have to be reduced by 5 minutes, costing an extra £400. And then I think you could have spent a long time thinking about the next bit. It said, find the cheapest way to complete the project in a time that is 10 minutes less. State which activities are reduced and the total cost of doing this. So we've got to reduce 2 activities if we're going to save 10 minutes. We've got to work out 2 activities that you can do that with, that don't have an additional kind of knock-on cost to things. So the 2 that we are going to reduce, what does it work out as? I think it works out as being H and J, isn't it? That are the better 2. Go to the very end, because they don't have any overall effect on everything else that's going on. If you reduce those, then I can move forward by 1 and they would move forward. That would do it. That would get us there inside the time that we need. So it's H and J at a cost of £1,000. And there we go. That's supposed to be a pound sign. H and J at a cost of £1,000. There we go. That was only 2 marks for that bit. So 1 mark for the B bit and 1 mark for that. And that's maths.